technical session of the annual International Research Conference 2023. Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences of General Sir John Kothalavala Defence University. Before commencing the session, I would like to introduce the panel of judges for the poster session. Chartered Quantity Surveyor Nishantha Vikramasinghe, Director, Construction Cost Management Private Limited. Dr. A.K.R.N. Munasinghe, Senior Lecturer, Department of Spatial Sciences, Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences of General Sir John Kothalavala Defence University. Dr. Ravihansa Chandra Tilaka, Managing Director, Canville Holdings Private Limited. The posters of architecture and quantity surveying are now being evaluated at the Design Studio 1 of the faculty premises. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you again to the technical session on architecture. This session is evaluated by Professor Anuradha Wijesinghe, Professor Elisa Pereira, and Dr. Niranga Alhakon. This technical session is chaired by Architect Dilumini De Mel, Senior Vice President of Sri Lanka Institute of Architects. Now I cordially invite the rapporteur of the session, Ms. K.S. K.N.J. Kudasinghe, to introduce the session chair.
Good morning. It is my honor and privilege to introduce the chair for the technical session of the Department of Architecture, Architect Dilumini De Mel. Architect Dilumini De Mel is a senior practicing chartered architect in the Sri Lankan construction industry. Architect Dilumini De Mel has been involved in the field of architecture since 1994 after successfully completing a BSc in Built Environment from the University of Moratuwa. Subsequently, she went on to complete her Masters in Architecture from the University of Moratuwa in 1998. She is currently reading for a PhD in Arbitration in the Construction Industry from the Management Science University in Malaysia. Architect Dilumini is an external examiner and tutor for the City School of Architecture, Colombo. Architect Dilumini has been involved in the design of some of the prestigious hotels in Sri Lanka, including the Blue Waters at Walduwa and hotel complex at Kandalama for Kanto Lanka Resorts. She has also been involved in the design of some of the exclusive houses and mass housing scale projects, such as disaster resilient housing for the tsunami affected areas. Architect Dilumini is a member of the Sri Lankan Institute of Architects, the SLIA, and a former international member of the American Institute of Architects. Architect Dilumini was elected to the main council of the SLIA during the periods from 2009 to 2013. Subsequently, she has been elected as the Assistant Treasurer for the SLIA for the years 2014 and 2015. She has also served as a Chairperson for Professional Affairs in the board of the SLIA from 2017 to 2019. Architect Dilumini currently serves as a Senior Vice President of the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects. Furthermore, adding to expansive professional career, Architect Dilumini is an Executive Committee member of the Construction Industry Revival Committee of the Presidential Secretariat. She is also the official SLIA representative for the Condominium Authority Planning Committee. She is a qualified professional of the Green Building Council of Sri Lanka. Architect Dilumini's expertise, combined with her passion and commitment, make her an exemplary role model for aspiring architects. Without any further ado, Madam, I cordially invite you to the head table on stage to commence the technical sessions of the Department of Architecture of the IRC 2023. Thank you.
for the session 2. Good morning, everybody, and I welcome all you to the first session for today. That is under the faculty theme, Built Environment and Spatial Sciences, and technical session 2 for the program Architecture. And I would like to thank the management and the coordinator of the conference for inviting me for this important session, and we will start the proceedings for today. I would like to invite all the presenters to the table. Now I will read out the names. Please come up to the stage. First speaker will be Architect SR Guneratne. Architect Guneratne, please come to the stage. And then Mr. A.D. Amaraweera. Mrs. KDHJ Premarathne. Mrs. Minusha Sanjunee. Please join the table. Thank you. Now I will announce the guidelines for today's presentations. All the presenters will be getting 10 minutes time period to do your presentation. After 7 minutes, there will be a timekeeper somewhere there, and they will make an indication that 7 minutes have gone. And then again, in the ninth minute, they will indicate the time. So 10th minute, that will be over. The oral presentations will be assessed by an independent panel of judges, and so they will be here, and the results will be announced later. Okay, let's start the first presentation. Sustainability and high-rise design for the future. Importance of connectivity between vertical living and the natural environment. Architect SR Guneratne.
Good morning, everyone. My research topic is sustainability and high-rise design for the future, with the focus on the importance of connectivity between vertical living and the natural environment. My presentation overview is as follows. The background to study is that with new technology and increasing population, high-rise built living in vertical cities has become an accepted way of life by the end of the 20th century, which is problematized by living above the ground, building height, namely, negatively impacts on occupants' well-being. Thus, greenery and quality views are important for occupants as they strengthen their resistance to adverse conditions caused by building height, which is a problem in high-rise living. This aspect has not been given much thought in the Sri Lankan property development industry up to now, resulting in the construction of high-rise apartments that cause sensory deprivation, especially on the high floors. Thus, the central construct of my study is that designers and planners should incorporate elements to create user-friendly high-rise apartments in future to mitigate the negative impact of living above the ground. My aim and objectives are as follows: ascertain whether living above the ground impacts negatively on the livability of users, occupying upper levels of local high-rise apartments, determine what attributes of high-rises create negative impacts on users, occupying upper levels of local high-rise apartments, to recommend solutions to minimize negative impact of building height on users of local high-rise apartments in order to enhance their livability. The research aim is to ensure the well-being of future urban communities through the design of user-friendly high-rise apartments in Sri Lanka, with the ultimate aim being to contribute to the growth of a sustainable future global city as envisioned by visionaries such as Dr. Sancturies. The summary of literature findings related to Objective 1. All negative impacts on occupants due to living in high-rises are categorized under 3 themes: issues regarding living conditions, issues regarding building height, and issues regarding social conditions. A summary of negative impact on occupants due to living in high-rises categorized into 3 main themes as previously explained. Thus, distance from ground zero, sense of entrapment, sensory deprivation, distance towards the horizon, and perception of safety being the concerns. Research focus, negative impact on occupants due to building height and how to mitigate negative impact to improve quality of high-rise living. The summary of literature findings related to Objective 2, building height, negative impacts on both physical and mental well-being of occupants under these attributes. Distance from ground zero, sense of entrapment, I've already mentioned this. Summary of literature findings related to Objective 3, contact with greenery and access to views, minimize negative impact of building height on occupants. Thus, the research questions, objectives and aim, and findings from literature are aligned here. The research aim is realized through research conclusions, recommendations, and future projections. Research focus, how greenery, access to views, and towards the horizon, these variables impact on occupants' well-being to mitigate negative impact of building height. Data collection has been through literature reviews and the research study itself to ascertain whether participants' responses and information gathered from literature review coincide or contain any differences. The research methodology, the case study selection method has been adopted. Multiple case study strategies with comparative analysis. Selection of 3 apartments based solely on the number of floors and the nature of the building context. The contexts are shown graphically on the right-hand side of the slide. 65 questions were created, both open-ended and closed-ended. Questions were aligned to research objectives. The Google Forms used to prepare the questionnaire. The same questionnaire was distributed among occupants of all 3 apartments. The set of concerns established narrowed down scope, participants' age group, gender not being considered with limited participant availability, literacy, 1 participant from 1 family, participants for research limited to occupants who could enjoy a view from only one side. Research method, qualitative research methodology, research data concerns human experience, hence it would be appropriate to use this method. How the setting influences experience of building height, and findings will be generalizable to the population of high and middle income inmates of high-rise apartments. The data analysis method was the horizontalization through phenomenology by Mustakars. The closed-ended questions were derived from the literature review and thematized, while the open-ended questions were horizontalized into subcodes, and the subcodes contains 2 codes and final themes. The research scope has been covered under analysis. 54 responses received from participants of 3 case studies summarized below. Case study 118, case study 219, case study 317. Admission of non-Sri Lankans and former expatriate Sri Lankans to create representative cross-section of population as given below. Effect of building height on participants. The statistics and the number crunching is on the right-hand side of the slide. And I summarize, data shows participants avoid looking down vertically from either balcony or inside of building, especially 10th floor and above. Responses of occupants living on level 5 and below differ in this regard. Building height is felt more intensely when they are on the cantilevered balconies rather than inside the building, especially level 10 and above. Case 2, participants do not feel building height when using balconies due to sight of greenery. Therefore, residents occupying levels up to 5th floor use external balconies. The external balconies are hardly ever used on 5th floor and above. Case study 1 and 3, those living on the 10th floor and above did not prefer to see the view from the balcony. In case study 3, participants on level 40 prefer to use loggia since they are not cantilevered like balconies. The trees located around the buildings, the green landscape which creates a green ground cover, reduces the perception of building height. Hence, the desire to view the environment up to level 5 as responses from the dwellers at high-rises. 83.3% of participants prefer to see the natural environment when they look outside. 87% of participants excited and happy to see greenery at eye level. 83.4% of overall participants strongly and simply agree to being oblivious to building height. Therefore, most respondents prefer to see a green environment in close proximity, which creates a sense of well-being and freedom. Majority of the participants spend their days off outside the apartment since they feel a sense of entrapment and monotony generated by building height, lack of quality views and lack of natural environment. When enumerating reasons given by participants who spend their day off in apartments, they say they're happy and enjoy the apartments, case study 2, level 5 to 10, and environment because of the accessibility to quality views and greenery. All respondents from level 5 to level 4 stated that they feel trapped when looking outside the apartment due to the building context with tall buildings in close proximity. Participants prefer to gaze horizontally rather than look down vertically, since this allows them to become oblivious to building height. The responses in case study 1, 2, 3 are aligned for comparison here. Thus, a summary of analysis: green views from the building and towards the horizon impact positively on building height to create a sense of well-being on visitors. The conclusions: building height is negative associations, especially true of occupants who live on the upper floors. Connected to the natural environment could help mitigate these negative effects. Presence of indoor greenery, views of outdoor greenery, and the ability to touch the ground are factors that conduce to make occupants oblivious to the fact, which in turn contributes to the mitigation of the negative impact on occupants brought on by building height. The property development industry and urban designers to take cognizance of the city's landscape, especially with regard to the settings of high-rise apartments. My recommendations: to establish a set of guidelines and policies for the purpose of implementing context development plans related to high-rise development projects. Incorporating greenery in the interior of the high-rise apartment should be a mandatory requirement when applying for COCs. Provide quality views from windows. Windows should be raised and set back from the building's edge. Green images, accessible private roof gardens should be provided with green images in the interior of apartments, especially in apartments without access to quality views. Low-jet balconies are recommended due to safety concerns. The projections for the future: need for new conceptualization and approaches to urban planning, both indoor and outdoor greenery. With regard to the establishment of both indoor and outdoor greenery, high-rise and super high-rises slated for construction have recourse to advanced technology to project scenes from the natural world onto their walls and screens. The problems that face future generations, however, are not those associated with vertical living. It may be summarized by this quote by one of the fathers of phenomenology, Martin Heidegger: "The real plight of dwelling lies in this, that mortals ever search anew for the nature of dwelling, that they must ever learn to dwell." This implies that there are variables beyond the first two variables, that vertical living has an impact on mental well-being and physical well-being of individuals. Actually, there's a third variable, the proliferation of high-rises are the third variable, which causes vertical living has an impact on well-being. There's the fourth variable, the population explosion, which causes a proliferation of high-rises. And finally, the last variable is that humans do not know how to dwell, that there are no ceilings on their desires, which in the final analysis is what causes this problem. So I end on that philosophical note. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect Guneratne. I would like to invite the next speaker, next presenter, Mr. A.D. Amaraweera. The question and answer session will be after the presentations. So please note your queries if there are any, so that we will entertain them after all presentations are done.
Good morning to you all. Our research topic is impact of well-designed exterior built environment on enhancing well-being and quality of life of elders in wellness sanctuaries. The content as research initiation, literature review, methodology and development, analysis and conclusion will be covered under the presentation. According to the United Nations Funds Population Activities in 2014, population aging is a key demographic problem of the 21st century, with 1 in every 9 people being an elder, 60 years or older. By 2050, this number is predicted to be increased in 1 in every 5, and senior citizens are expected to surpass minors in 2047 for the first time in history. Aging is a natural incident where each and every human being experiences in their life cycle. As stated in the quote above, it has been proved that aging is a major key phenomena which should be addressed in the near future with a proper consideration. Although there are researches done regarding the interior environments and enhancing the well-being of elders, but somehow there is a lack of concerning the interactions of the elderly within the outdoor environments. So this was the approach to the research. When it comes to the problem statement, most of the developing countries are already designing wellness sanctuaries with concerning architectural aspects on enhancing their well-being. But when it comes to the Sri Lankan context, still designing with consideration or this trend has not still evolved. Presently, wellness sanctuaries which are designed for senior citizens are mainly the conversions of old buildings such as old houses, bungalows and government buildings. This was the identified problem because it is difficult to apply the design consideration and architectural aspects on these kind of reusing buildings. Basically, a shelter which is created for the senior citizens and it is difficult to accommodate due to their state of physical and psychological conditions. Providing a solution with architecture was the base of doing this research, with especially concerning about the exterior environments. This was the significance of the study. Main aim was analyzing the architectural aspects and design principles to maximize the user well-being on wellness sanctuaries designed for senior citizens with special reference to the exterior environments. The objectives are identifying the physical and psychological requirements of the elderly people, recognizing the suitable architectural aspects which could cater the requirements of the elderly people, conducting a comprehensive case analysis on the application of design principles to maximize the well-being in elderly homes in Sri Lanka, come up with the architectural recommendations based on the analysis. When considering the literature review, it is mainly focused on identifying the connection between human being and environment. Based on that, according to Brown and Grant in 2005, experiencing and engaging with nature makes opportunity to achieve positive effects such as psychological health, healing ability, heart rate managing, developing concentration, stress level releasing, and blood pressure, maintaining of the blood pressure in human body, enhancing the quality of his or her behavior, and maximize other health factors. According to the Archt in 2003, doing workouts or exercise in the exterior environments, engaging with the nature helps to improve our moods and maximize the quality of self-esteem, and it is more effective than doing workouts in indoor environments. Likewise, there were lots of literature was found that proving there is a requirement of doing this research regarding the exterior environments of the elderly homes. When considering the research proportion, the study was conducted through a mixed method approach. A deep critical review was done through understanding the global scenario related to aging and the concept of healthy aging, enhancing well-being and the quality of life in elders. And therefore the parameters were taken from the sectors such as exterior facade, spatial organization, soft and hard landscapes, and enhancing social interaction through spaces. 3 case studies were selected from Kandy area to assess the parameters regarding the exterior environments, and the elderly homes are Angel Wing Retired Home, Sri Subodhi Elders Home, and Home for Elders in Mahaya. The study was further conducted by visual surveys and considering their user perception of their satisfactory levels of the exterior environments where they live in. The visual survey was taken with the on-site observation and understand the existing scenario of the elderly homes. The photographic study was conducted and they were incorporated in the analysis. Semi-structured interviews and structured questionnaire were taken place to understand the elderly perception regarding the assessing the parameters of the exterior environments. The data which was gathered were analyzed through comparative analysis and discussion methods and finally reached out for a conclusion. Therefore, the parameters will be divided into two sectors such as exterior landscape and exterior facades. And under the architectural attributes of the exterior facade, door window proportions and placements, extension of eaves and slabs, corridors, verandas, amount of eaves and vistas capturing will be assessed. And under the exterior landscape, pathways and pavements, shelters, seating arrangements, greeneries, buffer zone, elements and material usage will be assessed. When coming up to the collection of data with 3 case studies, reference to the on-site observation of the exterior environment will be discussed for each case study. When considering about the parameters of Angel Wings retired home regarding the exterior environment, pathways and pavement maintained on a single level to make easy accessibility to engage with the outdoor spaces. Sheltered areas were kind of lacked and seatings were not catered in the outdoor spaces. Greeneries were in the edges of the boundaries and no buffer zone was maintained. However, non-slippery material was used to secure their safety with natural elements. When moving towards the Sri Subodhi Elders Home as the second case study, slightly sloped ramp was highlighted in the entranceway and other pavements maintained on a single levels with low slopes. The outdoor space was enriched with greeneries and sheltered spaces and buffer zone was naturally created with the growing mediums on the fences. Elements were placed in each and every space to make elders engage with the outdoor activities. Several materials were used in transitional spaces in the design. Moving toward the third case study, as the King George Elders Home, common gathering spaces and spaces for outdoor engaging activities were provided in the design. Natural shelters were provided and the absence of the buffer zone was highlighted. There were seating arrangements provided to capture the scenic beauty of the Candy City. The pathways and the main pathways were maintained on a single level and non-slippery materials were used. When considering about the data which was collected through the on-site observations of the exterior facade, as the case study shows, the door window proportions placements were placed accordingly to the function of the space to grab the daylight and the ventilation to the indoor spaces. Extension of slabs on the upper floors has taken advantage to enhance the gathering spaces inside the building. Since this is a conversion of a hotel, no corridors or verandas were seen. When considering the views and vistas capturing through the exterior facade, captures the Hantan hills and the other openings were placed to capture the greeneries. Non-slippery materials with easy maintenance has been used. When considering the second case study, each and every parameter which was assessed regarding the exterior facade was successfully included in the spaces. Door window proportions, extension of eaves and slabs, corridors, verandas, and views and vistas capturing was successfully done in the design. Going through the third case study, purposely placed doors and windows was observed. No corridors or verandas spaces in the exterior facade was observed. When coming up to the findings and the analysis of the structured questionnaire, the above graph shows majority of about the case studies of the majority of the elders in the elderly home prefer to stay in exterior environment to spend there most of the time. Through the graph in the right side, it was based on the factors which enhance the quality of their favorite space among the elderly homes, and the factors are easiness of accessibility, potential of developing interactions among others, number of capturing views and vistas, and psychological and physical comfort. So as you can see in the right side graph, the case study 2 was highlighted, which means through all the case studies, elders accommodating in the Sri Subodhi Elders Home, which is the case study 2, were the most satisfied elders with the exterior environments of the elderly home. When discussing the results of the structured questionnaire in each case study, highlighted through a red color dotted box will be shows the extreme satisfactory level, and the black colored dotted box will be indicate the least satisfactory level according to the perception of the elders. The photographic study which was conducted under the visual service will be incorporated with the analysis of the case studies. Moving towards the first case study, views and vistas capturing was the most satisfied parameter, and the door window proportions and the placements were also in a satisfactory level. The absence of corridors and verandas resulted in least satisfied parameter. When referring to the exterior environment on the first case study, the absence of seating arrangements buffer zone, elements and water bodies resulted in least satisfactory parameter. Moving toward the second case study under the same scenario, as the graph shows above, each and every parameter which was assessed regarding the exterior facade were resulted in extremely satisfactory level on the elderly perception. Considering the exterior landscape, absence of the seating arrangements were highlighted among all the other parameters. Analyzing the results of the third case study, verandas and the amount of views and vistas capturing lies in the extremely satisfactory level. When referring to the satisfactory level in the elderly perception in exterior environments, extremely satisfied with the provided seating arrangements, and they were least satisfied with the absence of buffer zones and elements. According to the results of the on-site observation, were proved in the results of the structured question. The global population's aging has led to the need of understanding the factors to consider when designing elderly homes in both outdoor and indoor environments. Elders in Sri Lanka often seek care and support from these homes as they struggle with loneliness and disabilities. Through the case study, Sri Subodhi Elders' Home was the most appreciation by elders. Next, the King George Elders' Home, and lastly, the Angel Wings Retired Home. Improvements in accessibility, natural elements, and seating arrangements can encourage elders to engage with the outdoors and improve mental health. Engaging in outdoor activities such as gardening can also provide spiritual healing and therapy, where elders' satisfaction levels are significantly higher when they have access to greeneries and views. Horticulture therapy such as gardening is a common leisure activity that enhances physical and mental health. Therefore, corridors and verandas should be enhanced to increase the interaction among them. Pathways and pavements should be concerned with the usage of materials and maintaining proper levels and slopes with supportive structures such as handrails. Amount of the views and vistas towards the greeneries should be increased with proper door-window placements. Outdoor spaces should be enhanced to engage with outdoor with providing seating arrangements in shelters. Buffer zones should be maintained to protect the comfortability in physical factors. So these are the references which guided me to do this research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. A.D. Amaraweera. Let me call upon the next presenter. She'll be talking about Sri Lankan identity in architecture, perception of lay people on design and Sri Lankan house. She is KDHJ Premarathne. You have 10 minutes. Please stick to the time. Try to stick to the time.
Good morning. Our research topic is Sri Lankan identity in architecture, perception of lay people on design, Sri Lankan houses. This is the outline of the entire presentation. And I will start with the introduction. You know that client or users are main party that involved with the process of architectural design. And we have observed in Sri Lankan context, one of the main preferences of the client or users seeking a design houses with the Sri Lankan identity. But there is a challenge to the architects how to interpret that, translate preferences of client or users to the practical design solution. So in architectural history of Sri Lanka, some significant architects used Sri Lankan identity in their residential architecture. For example, architect Jeffrey Bawa, architect Minette De Silva, architect Anjulendra, architect Vijitha Basnayaka. Also, we can find some example from the young architects as well. So, our research problem is what Sri Lankan lay people perceive as Sri Lankan identity in residential architecture. With that research problem, our research objective is to find out how lay people perceive Sri Lankan identity in Sri Lankan architecture, residential architecture, and what kind of architecture that expect as a design Sri Lankan house. And methodology. So we were selected 82 participants using purposive sampling method. All these participants are different in ages, occupation, levels of education, and also they have recent experience in house design. So all these individuals from diverse in background and regions in Sri Lanka. And we were collected data using researcher-made structured interviews, and these collected thematic data were analyzed by using identify recurring themes and patterns with the data. So our structured interviews categorized into 3 parts: Part A, Part B, and Part C. Part B, demographic information, and Part B, general idea of the Sri Lankan identity of house, and Part C, perception on design house with Sri Lankan identity. So these are the Part A demographic information, which is occupation, age, education and background, living district, race and religion, and Part B, identification of house with Sri Lankan identity. In Part C, there are 7 factors. I'm not going to read it out, and these are mentioned in further slides. So then we move into the results and discussion. We carefully reviewed the coded transcript to extract the meaningful categories and organize that coded data into the themes. And our interpretations were made based on those identified themes. According to the structured interview, this is the part A. It is indicated the demographic data. So accordingly, participants are in different occupation, age, education level, and each percentages are indicated here. And here it shows the percentage of each participant according to the living district, religion, and race. This is the part B. So we asked to provide the general idea of Sri Lankan identity of the design house. Accordingly to the results, majority response perceptionist, which means 29.27%, prefer with the concerning of personal preferences without concerning the Sri Lankan identity. But the significant portion of the respondent, which means 26.83%, identified the Sri Lankan identical houses having vernacular influences. And also 24.39% respondents recognized it as a fusion of vernacular and modern features. So this is the part C. It is a perception on design house with the Sri Lankan identity. This is the factor 1, external appearance. External appearance of the Sri Lankan identical houses. According to this result, highest percentage associated to the external features with the houses which have fusion of vernacular and modern features, which is 39.02%. In the same time, 34.15% respondents believe that design reflected according to the personal preferences rather than consider Sri Lankan identity. Next factor is internal space and interrelation between spaces. Most of the participants, which means 53.66%, think that spatial arrangement of the houses reflecting personal preferences rather than aligning with the Sri Lankan identity. But some participants of 21.95 recognize it as a fusion, vernacular and modern features, while not responding associated with the internet spatial arrangement with the colonial houses. And material use. So most of the respondents, which means 43.90%, perceived a mix of material used in vernacular and modern houses. And building technology. Majority of the participants had no idea about building technology in relation to Sri Lankan identical houses. So, but some of the respondents perceived it as a modern and contemporary buildings technologies. And this is another factor, response to Sri Lankan physical, cultural and religious context. According to that, response to the Sri Lankan physical context, most of the participants believe, which means 26.83%, the house should be located in the middle of the land with enough space around the house, and 17.07% participants throughout the house should be located with the front garden. And response to Sri Lankan cultural context. Most of them, 51% to nearly 51% had no clear idea about the role of cultural context in the Sri Lankan identical house design. And next one is the response to the Sri Lankan religion context. Most of believe 36.59% that design should be incorporated a shrine room or prayer room to reflect the religion context. However, significant amount of participants, which means to 24%, to the religious context as unnecessary and not as a part of the identity of the house. And next factor is respond to the Sri Lankan climatic condition, which categorized into two: facilitating light and ventilation and weather protection. So, in here, facilitating light and ventilation, most of the respondents believe that house should be facilitated with the light and ventilation using both traditional and contemporary methods. In weather protection, most of participants had no idea, while considerable participants, which means 19%, perceived as important of both traditional and modern method of weather protection. So this is the last factor, which is other Sri Lankan or traditional concepts. So it is divided into two: role of astrology in creation of a house with the Sri Lankan identity and traditional sustainable or eco-friendly concepts. So in here we can see 31.71% believe that astrology should be moderately used or considered as a valuable traditional knowledge to some extent. And in same time, 29% respondents saw astrology as playing a major role in creation of Sri Lankan identical houses. And next factor is traditional, sustainable and eco-friendly concepts. So in here, most of the respondents, which means 75%, believe that the importance of those concepts in house construction and to be used as much as possible. So with that results, we have concluded several factors. The research shows a diverse range of opinion and understanding among the respondents. It reflects the complex nature of defining and identifying Sri Lankan architectural identity. And according to the analysis, we identified multiple categories of houses that respondents perceive under the houses which have Sri Lankan identity. So those houses are houses with vernacular influence, houses with colonial influence, houses with fusion of vernacular and modern features, houses fulfilling contemporary needs, houses built based on personal preferences with considering Sri Lankan identity. And these findings emphasize the needs of the context-specified understanding of the Sri Lankan identity in architecture, and also it is helped to get the idea there are no fixed or universally applicable guidelines for the design a house with Sri Lankan identity. So, finally, this research is helped to understanding the complex nature of the Sri Lankan architectural identity. Also, it emphasizes the importance of context sensitivity and the architectural design practice. So, this is the limitation and recommendation. If the sample could be further enriched to several factors such as cultural, regional variations, and findings might be more generalized, and limited knowledge of the participants of the relevant subject area might have affected to the findings. This research only focused on the lay people's perception regarding the Sri Lankan identity, and it serves as a foundation for the further development of architectural principles and the guidelines to define the Sri Lankan identity. And also this research can be further doing with the changing the sample population as well. So this is the end of the presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Premarathne. However, it is very important to remind about the time because judges are watching. So please try to stick to the time lines given to you. Okay, we will go to the next speaker. The next presentation, the final presentation. Mrs. Minosha Sanjunee, 15-minute city concept for designing resilience, future cities and the new normal of urban built environment in a post-pandemic world. You are given only 10 minutes.
Very good morning to you all. Referring to the conference theme, digitalization for resilient cities and a model that bases the same ideology seems timely for me, and this study was carried out on calculating the credibility of such urban model, namely 15-minute city model, specifically in post-pandemic times, along with the recently popular new normal or the new way of life. So in year 2020, the world was facing the most challenging pandemic, and it is evidence that the pandemic was an unprecedented socio-economic crisis that the world faced after the World War II, and the containment of the COVID-19 pandemic, the containment of the spread deemed the entire global population to their houses. So these lockdowns made us realize the crucial need of good infrastructure within the vicinity of our houses. Further lockdowns in a movement brought living and work together into the limits of our houses again. So more specifically, the urban community experienced what was missing in the urban environments existed before the pandemic. So after the restrictions being lifted and the pandemic starts to subside, the new normal was a very popular theme or rather a phrase, and the health sectors as well as other disciplines believe that the world bouncing back to where it was before the pandemic is not resilient or sustainable. So via new normal, a significant behavioral change was made. Simply people started to purchase goods from the shop which is near to their houses rather going out, or to be close with the nature and use green mobility to prevent any containment with encounters with the virus encounters. So emission rates and pollution rates seeing a slight reduction in the pandemic times, but after the pandemic subsides, the climate crisis again strikes back in the world. So this demands for a paradigm shift in urban designing, addressing green mobility, optimized use of automobiles, pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods, and digitalization for city functioning, green and blue infrastructure, independent local neighborhoods, inclusive built environments, and at last, sustainable city structure. So there are many conceptual models addressing this developed in the post-pandemic world, and one such is 15-minute city model, which was introduced by Carlos Moreno in 2016. And the core idea of 15-minute city was that where we can, the environment that we can reach our daily nodes and daily needs within 15 minutes of time is what 15-minute city idea was. So these hyperlocal living structures prioritizing health and sustainability seems to have been exactly what this post-pandemic world what we need. So Carlos Moreno defined 4 factors of this concept. First one is density, second one is diversity, third one is proximity, and the last is digitalization. And after the pandemic, with reference to the pandemic, he defined 6 social functions that should be included within the 15 minutes neighborhood: living, working, commerce, healthcare, education, and entertainment. So we aim to develop a standardized quantitative framework for the calculation of compatibility of 15-minute city concept in the future for other urban developments. So we did a literature review on selected 15 papers, research papers, which included this concept detailing and especially case studies. And again, with all these research papers, we have identified and we have gone through some of the news articles that was published on web pertaining to other oppositions and protests made against this concept. So these are the 4 main case studies that we identified. Away from Paris, where this concept was first initiated, China was another case where they use this concept as independent from Paris implications. So the conceptual idea was first introduced in 2004, and in 2018 it was further amended, making sure that it is 99% accessibility to public services within 15-minute walking, and 90% of the population to access public open space within 15 minutes by the means of by year 2035. So the city of Shanghai uses the concept 15-minute living circle, deviating from the 15-minute city model. So the next case is Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. So they use these concepts at 20-minute neighborhoods, and it was first proposed in Plan Melbourne for 2017-2015, in which these 20 minutes neighborhoods, they includes work, school, and returning back to home within these 20 minutes, and supported with other other amenities. So again, it is further supported with green mobility too. Then the third case study is Stockholm from Sweden. So this is the extreme case where they stretch the concept to be at 1-minute city, but in not literalized terms. So the city concept was named as 1 minute, but literally they try to compress the functions to 1 minute or to the street. So in this case, the street was the focal point, and they try to make the streets as a place and create the connections between that street. So further, this street-based development plan promotes the contribution of citizens. In examples, the citizens were the one to decide this parking area, size of the parking area, or the green park in their urban neighborhoods. And in these pictures, it shows this special designing unit that they introduced to the neighborhoods, which are movable, flexible, and which can be customized by the pedestrian to create flexible pedestrian spaces in their neighborhoods. So this is the most popular case of 15-minute city model, Paris. So they may propose this as an election campaign and initiated right after her selection. So most importantly, they started reforming the city but without restructuring and doing any demolition to the existing structures. So this law will just proximate the their proposal includes three main cornerstones. So the first one is a school to be the capital of these 15 minutes neighborhoods, and promote culture and strengthen the local community, and democracy devoted to participatory planning throughout the planning process. And street was again considered as the base point for this. So we summarized the case studies with city, distance, mode of transport, motivation, urban amenities that is included, and the aim. And this is how we developed our framework. First we did a literature review and we identified strength, risk and challenges of the concept. And then we identified the variables for the analysis of the framework, and we identified five dependent variables covering the 6 social functions. And at last we identified analysis methods to quantify the impact or the compatibility of the concept. And this is the final framework. We have 5 main steps. For any given urban context, we can first map the quantifiable criterions which divide from the dependent variables: care, education, provisioning, entertainment and transport, through health, school services, daycare, preschool, primary, secondary education, supermarkets, libraries and other entertainment facilities, and then into the transport. So in next step, we can create the parcels with 15 minutes distance, including buffer zones. And then the time assignment, measure time from central to the quantifiable criterions by walking. And then the fourth is measurement of distance between social functions based on the supply point and then the demand. Then the fifth is coverage assignment. So in this, where we comes to the deviation of the buffer zone. So considering the spread of social functions, we can define whether it's 15 or 20, and then analyze the inclusion and exclusion of amenities within these parcels. So the last one is network analysis, where we analyze the pedestrian tolerance of infrastructure, inclusion and exclusion of workable zones, infrastructure for automobiles, traffic congestion and its impacts such as time and emission spend. So it will result the 15-minute city value, the initial model values, with the respect to this given context that we are practicing on. So this will bring us to the final conclusion. So this was a timely pandemic need to develop, restructure our cities to more sustainable and resilient means. And we can conclude, and we concluded our study on 4 main defining concerns of 15-minute city model for any of the cities. First one is how to create complete neighborhoods, including all the essential amenities. How to ensure a place for everyone, which is inclusive for all the vulnerable parties. How to develop people-centered streets and mobility, and how to create connected places throughout the neighborhood. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanjunee. That was timely presentation. Yes, now we have come to the conclusion of all 4 presentations. And we identified that first and fourth presenters were timely, they stick to the time, and the second and third exceeded the time. So this is for the judges. Okay, now we will go to the next segment, question and answer session. I hope the audience, you have noted down any things that you want to clarify with them. So this is the time for you to ask your questions from the presenters.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting. I have 2 questions, if you permit me. Right. The first one is to the third presenter, that is about the Sri Lankan architecture. So it's very, very interesting to see that. I mean, we have no identity to say at the end, right? Okay, people don't perceive that anything as Sri Lankan architecture. Okay, that's fine. But my question is to the presenter, that do you think that any country has an architectural identity of its own, or is it just a kind of hegemonized you know that some people, some powerful people, those who kind of they have authoritative kind of image making of certain type of architecture, and just to kind of promote certain buildings. Like for example, if I openly say, like in Sri Lanka, Jeffrey Bawa and all these people, I mean, have been promoted by certain group of people saying, oh, this is Sri Lankan architecture, right? And giving it a kind of, showing them as icons throughout the world, publishing books and having conferences and showing it among the kind of media people and all that, promoting that as Sri Lankan architecture. So as in the other countries, I believe, right? Isn't that what actually is happening? If you go and ask from the other people, even in India or maybe in European countries or in USA, in Japan, do you think that this the ordinary people really kind of perceive anything as their own architecture, or is it just a way of living? And just as you very correctly presented out your presentation, kind of findings, for ordinary people, I mean, these things doesn't matter at all. What is your response to that? I would like to know that.
Thank you for the question, sir. So when we are talking about the Sri Lankan identity, so we don't have exact evidence to have our own identical residential architecture. So what we have to do is, so we have to further research on that with cooperation with the archaeologists and all. So with the time period, which is Anuradhapura period to Kandy period, we have no any residential architecture which have evidences with the Sri Lankan identity. It is timely evolved. But because of the timely evolved the Sri Lankan identity, so we have to know what extent that evolved the identity of Sri Lankan houses. So
I don't know. Maybe that is what you think. But my understanding is, I don't know whether is it a requirement, because the architecture usual response is a kind of response to kind of a situation or a context and the kind of people's needs and all that, rather than kind of responding to an identity of a particular nation. I don't know why. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Okay, that is how.
So I need to incorporate that in India, especially in Kerala, there is their identical structures, houses. So then what about us? So
Okay, maybe we can have debate about it. But I don't think that even in Kerala, that any part of the world that people have their residences or anything built to have an identity rather than responding to a context. Maybe cultural kind of traditions and the kind of the physical conditions and the weather situations and all that. That is their response. But rather than to kind of trying to preserve their own identity, I don't know anyone had done it like that. Anyway, that is. Thank you very much for your response to that. But let me. Am I permitted to have the second question to the last presentation? Okay, that is 15-minute city. Interesting that. Okay, now this 15-minute city concept, I know that it is being kind of debated nowadays among so many kind of different scholars and the kind of practitioners and so on. Do you think in Sri Lanka that 15-minute city concept is possible with the type of urban areas that we have, very small towns other than Colombo, right? We have a kind of population, well, some people say this is one of the most kind of densely populated country, true enough, but is it adequate, this density that we have, and the kind of the lifestyles that we have? For example, we work in maybe in Surya, but you're still your residence is in. The majority of the people are coming from Colombo in that area, right? And your employment is not necessarily located close to within close proximity, right? So, and even people living within Colombo metropolitan area, their employment is not necessarily within 15 minutes, right? I mean, that is far away. That's why they have to travel hours and hours. So, do you think with this kind of arrangement, with this kind of a situation, 15 minutes city concept is possibly employed in Sri Lanka, implemented in Sri Lankan context?
Yes, so the thing was, in the initial implications too, digitalization was a very prominent case, which is lacking in Sri Lanka because they work on virtual platforms rather than in physical offices. So as you perfectly mentioned, that we working here and then the homes being somewhere else is something that we could not stop at the moment. But in immediate cases of Colombo, actually we are extending this study to that. So there are some parcels that we can adapt this system. So in some cases we have houses within the vicinity of working areas. So not 15 minutes, but we can expect to kind of compress the concept to some other variations. As same in other cities, in Melbourne and other cities examples, they have gone away from 15 minute city concept and developed to some sustainable forms based on these diversity, proximity, digitalization and density. So we can further go into individual, location specific and social and cultural specific example or a protocol for ours.
Use and therefore the kind of residential choices. I mean, it's something very, very important that we need to think about living close to the kind of working environment, their kind of work, yes, or at least kind of digitalization and all that. Even though we talk about it, yes, there are other factors that we have to take into account. Yes. Thank you.
Small clarifications.
Sorry, could I just respond to what Jagat said? Very interesting point, because Hassan Fathi, in the Architecture for the Poor, I think, mentions that the building styles of the poor, when they're abstracted and gentrified for the elite prefer that, but the poor do not. So maybe what we should do is actually what, it's interesting, Hirasha's research, maybe what we should do is we should have kind of a purposive sample where the population is segregated in terms of maybe income or class. And then if the experiment had been done, I think we would have had a very clear notion through their responses of what kind of architecture they would prefer. So we would discover, I think, that an image of the architecture of a particular nation is segregated according to income levels. Just the theory based on what Hassan Fathi discovered in Egypt.
As the co-author of that presentation, thank you very much for that valuable question, Dr. Munasinghe. Actually, I partly agree with you, 50-50, but it is actually beyond our research scope. The next research will be the perceptions of experts like Dr. Jagat, Professor Jagat, right? So I will contact you, we will contact you definitely. But I want to, within our scope, I will explain that there is no actually hidden idea that we need identity in our research. We objectively asked people about their opinion. Actually, as architects, we experience when we are discussing with the clients, they ask for some kind of our own Sri Lankan thing. They actually don't know. It is a very vague idea of with them. When we ask from them, they are actually confused, are confusing. So we have to explain what kind of thing. One of my experience I will explain. One of my clients asked me, I want some kind of round, huge columns. Then I asked him, you think is it actual Sri Lankan thing? Sri Lankan columns? We think so. Then it is actually colonial columns. Most of clients think large round columns are our own style. Then other thing is Roman tiles, half round tiles. Most of the people, lay people think those are Sinhala Ulu, but those are not Sinhala Ulu. Those are just Roman half round tiles imported during colonial periods. But the lay people perception is like that. So we needed to search for real thing, real opinion about them. Rather just saying this is not, the people don't know about identity. So the basis for the research was that. Thank you. It's actually lying on process of long process of researchers. We need to see our actually case study researchers with collaborative thing research with archaeologists, and we have to find our own literature through literature and experts' knowledge. Right? It's actually vague area, it's still grey area. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Other speakers, other presenters as well?
I'd like to comment on the first and second the presentations. First one, of course, referring to the identity of the houses, it is very difficult to identify a single system for a country, because countries, societies are not homogeneous, it is a heterogeneous society, and then always the architecture is based on three primary forces as our previous researchers has identified. It is socio-cultural, economic and environmental, and then right throughout the country it is not the same. So it is very difficult to find anything called national identity. And then the other thing, the second presentation also, now we are referring to we were trying to test the what you call adaptability of the usage of vertical living. That also is impacted by the socio-cultural society, because it may be not acceptable to our societies, but may be acceptable to other societies who are familiar with them.
So, just to comment on that, we basically decided to not use that variable. If you followed my presentation, we just decided to look at the views and the greenery with regard to the impact of well-being, impact of verticality on well-being. We basically realized that these three factors impinged on the verticality of high-rise apartments, but we decided not to work on that. Actually, those other factors are part of a greater research, but we only use this particular variable. Just to answer your question, we have looked into it, but we did not select those two for this research.
Yes, thank you.
I ask, yeah. From the Sri Lankan identity thing, I noticed two facts. One is, I think, from the sample you have selected, I noticed 53% of them doesn't know about the modern technology of housing. And most of them are using traditional materials, which has increased the cost of housing, cost of buildings. So what are the factors, when the chair can answer this, you have taken to avoid that kind of situation?
Thank you for the question, sir. Can you please repeat it, then I can understand it?
From your research findings, I noticed 53% of your sample doesn't know about the modern technology of housing, right? One of the factors I noticed. And the second one is, most of them prefer traditional materials in building a house. So for example, we think when we building a house, we had to use bricks. So that's something which other people have a perception like this. So I think your research indicated that is the preference of many people. So just want to ask, this is a kind of for our interest. So that is something that, of course, both two factors increases the cost of housing, the present cost of housing. So without knowing sometimes modern technology, we are going back towards, we can use, there are so many modern materials, modern ways of technologies to be used in construction of housing. So any suggestions for, making that knowledge, awareness to that kind of, layman especially?
Yes, sir, that according to the material usage, that most of the respondents that identified as that they have no idea about the materials that they use in the vernacular residential houses. So that we have to give a perception for these people regarding what are the materials that they have used in the past and what are the materials that we are using in the present. That is a lack of knowledge of the lay people. So first off, we have to give that knowledge for them, and then they will decide what are the things that they can use.
Actually, if I comment on that further, we have limited time. I will answer your question. Now, actually, the construction industry now, the contractors and the consultants are working in regions and in many areas. So actually, there should be strategies worked out in order to reach the general public in those areas, and so that maybe CSR, form of CSR projects, maybe different award systems. So actually now Sri Lanka Institute of Architects, we conduct that product award system. So we encourage the suppliers and manufacturers, not only the major ones but the minor ones who are about to start something, so that they will get to know, they are motivated and they are encouraged to do these things, so that we encourage the contractors to have, major contractors to have CSR projects. When they go to these regions, actually even from this CEDA authority, they have this award systems, and so when we go to these regions and when we evaluate their projects, we encourage them to conduct CSR projects in the region. For example, maybe ladies in those regional areas, how to paint, so that they can be aware about these materials and systems. Thank you. I think is sorry, there's one more question from the judges, so we will entertain that.
I think it's working. Okay, thank you very much for all the presenters. Nice presentations, and we also learned a lot of things with that one. But I have two questions for two presenters. For the first presenter, regarding the sky-rise building and the well-being in the life, you mentioned you have selected 3 buildings. When you select these 3 buildings, did you use any criteria to select the buildings based on the any kind of like people living in the some poorly area, or people living in the high metropolitan area on the city, like that? You did use any criteria? Okay, this is for the first presenter. For the second presenter, I have a question. You were talking about the designing the criteria for the elderly houses. Then you selected the 3 houses in the Kandy area. Then are you planning to give your recommendation only for that Kandy area, or it is for the country level representation? That is my 2 questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Actually, research showed from the literature review that verticality, the impact of verticality begins to be felt from the 50th floor onwards. Unfortunately, there aren't very many apartment buildings with 50 floors, so we had to contend for this research with apartments that are over 30 floors. This automatically eliminates the middle income and the low income groups. So these are high income groups, and that would be a limitation because unfortunately there aren't any apartments for the middle income and the low income above 30. The next part of the scope was the case study 1. I can't divulge the names, unfortunately. Case study 1 consists of a high rise in an area without other high rises. So this takes care of the view from a certain height. case study 2 with other high-rises but not in the close vicinity, and the case study 3 with high-rises in the immediate vicinity causing vertical sprawl. So these are the scope and limitations, and how it automatically eliminates a certain class. Hope that answers the question.
Yes. Thank you, Architect Guneratne, for that answer. And now I think the time is up, and we are supposed to conclude the session 2, architecture. I would like to thank all the presenters, all 4 presenters, for your interesting and informative presentations. And also, I appreciate the contribution made by the lovely audience, making this session fruitful and interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the technical session on architecture, and it is time to award certificates to the presenters. To give away the certificates to the oral presenters, I would like to invite the chair of the session, Architect Dilumini De Mel. SR Guneratne and Wijesinghe. AD Amaraweera and others. KDHJ, Premarathne and others. SMM Sanjunee and others. Thank you, Madam. Please remain on stage. I cordially invite Dr. A.H. Lakmal, Dean, Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences, accompanied by the Faculty Coordinator of IRC 2023, Architect Amaraweera Navaratne, to award a token of appreciation to the session chair, Architect Dilumini De Mel. Thank you, sir. The proceedings of the technical session on architecture are hereby concluded, and the session on quantity surveying will begin at 10:30 a.m. I invite you all to enjoy the refreshments served at the Design Studio 2 of the faculty premises.